This woman, who was 8 months pregnant, kept slapping herself. Ji-young then poured a glass of ice water over herself. It turned out that her best friend Suun had told her that she was pregnant with her husband's child. Her husband, who had hurried over, dragged and pulled the devastated Ji-young back home. Ji-young, still holding onto a glimmer of hope, questioned her husband if this was true. In-woo knelt down and said that it was just an accident, begging his wife to forgive him. He embraced his wife and said that he only loved her in this life. Ji-young pushed this hypocritical man away and told him to get out of the house immediately. Ji-young, whose heart was ashen, stumbled and turned into the room. After learning that Ji-young and In-woo had a falling out, Suun, the scheming woman, found In-woo's father, Chairman Woo, and was disgusted by her unscrupulous methods. Suun knelt down and begged the other party to help her and In-woo, and said that she was proficient in legal affairs and knew about the project that the chairman had been worrying about recently, and that she would do her best to help the chairman overcome the difficulties at any cost. Chairman Woo was obviously convinced by Suun. Suun was not yet able to gloat for long when she felt abdominal pain, and a trace of blood ran down her calf, the child she was carrying. Was ultimately unable to be kept. Time flies. 6 years have passed. Ji-young's show is broadcasted as a celebration on the whole network. In-woo can't help but feel a ripple in his heart when he sees a boy giving Ji-young flowers and hugging her. At this time, Ji-young's child has grown up and has a husband who loves her. The family of 3 is happy and preparing to go home. Just as Miho goes to the parking lot to get the car, Ji-young notices bloodstains on her clothes. Ji-young looks up and sees her son's nose bleeding profusely. Then she faints in her arms. The child was quickly taken to the hospital. After some tests, the doctor initially diagnosed that the child had suffered from overexercise. The results of the detailed tests would take a few days, and Ji-young's worried heart was finally set at ease. Suun had been unable to conceive since her last miscarriage, and she became excited whenever her stomach moved a little. However, the test results showed that she was still not pregnant, and Ji-young's family was waiting for the elevator when they ran into In-woo and Suun. The situation was extremely awkward, father and son by nature. In-woo recognized the child in front of him as his own son at a glance. Suun took the initiative to greet Ji-young. Ji-young walked out of the elevator without saying a word. In-woo watched his son go away and unconsciously wanted to follow him. He was pulled back by Suun. Ji-young didn't explain much and urged the car to leave. Suun returned to the company and went to her father-in-law's office. It turned out that Chairman Woo already knew that she was unable to bear children. He told Suun to do whatever it takes to get Ji-young's child back so that the family business could be passed on. The next day, Ji-young went to the hospital and the doctor told her some bad news. The child had been diagnosed with leukemia and needed a bone marrow transplant. However, after examination, Ji-young's blood type did not match. She had no choice but to contact her son's biological father, In-woo. However, the text message was read by Suun, who deleted it without thinking. Unable to get a reply, Ji-young called In-woo's office again. In-woo, hearing from his ex-wife for the first time in 6 years, was so excited that he rushed out and went to the cafe where they had arranged to meet. It was then that he learned that his son had leukemia. Ji-young hoped that he would go to the hospital to check whether his bone marrow was a match for his son. Meanwhile, Suun also learned from her subordinates that In-woo had hurried out of the office. She sensed that something was amiss. Sure enough, she saw In-woo walking with Ji-young. She hurried after them, but saw them get into a car and drive off. In-woo went to the hospital to have his blood tested. He needs to wait a few days for the results. The betrayal of 6 years ago seems like yesterday. Ji-young doesn't want to dwell on it, so she takes a taxi back to the company. Unexpectedly, Suun has been waiting for a long time. She says that she is In-woo's current wife and warns Ji-young to stay away from her husband. Ji-young says that In-woo is the father of the child. This is an unchangeable fact. Suun threatens to take back custody. She is also very good at this kind of lawsuit. It turned out that during the previous family meeting, the Chaebol grandfather had openly stated that he wanted the child back as an heir. Facing such a brazen person, Ji-young decided that she could not tolerate it anymore. She said unceremoniously that the guilty person could never be forgiven. A few days later, the results of In-woo's examination came out. The doctor said that his blood type still did not match the child's blood type. Ji-young begged the doctor to think of a way. The doctor suggested that they have another child and then use the umbilical cord blood for a transplant. Hearing this, the two of them couldn't help but look at each other. Filled with anger, Ji-young fainted. In-woo quickly picked her up and went to find a doctor. Looking at Ji-young in a coma, In-woo remembered the sweet past. Unfortunately, everything could not be returned. At this time, Suun called and asked where he was. In-woo just said he was at the hospital and hung up. When he returned to the ward, he found that the bed was already empty. The nurse said that Ji-young had already been discharged from the hospital and left. In-woo knew that his ex-wife still wouldn't forgive him. He was now filled with remorse. Ji-young, exhausted both physically and mentally, goes to her mother's tailor shop, hoping to find some comfort. But instead she gets a lecture from her mother, who has never been happy about the divorce. Ji-young leaves dejectedly. Her mother chases after her and asks what's wrong. Ji-young says that her child is sick, but dares not say that it has leukemia. Her mother then starts complaining that she only cares about her work and never pays attention to her child. If she has time to come crying to me, She might as well go back and spend more time with her son. Ji-young was both sad and desperate. Tears of grievance and helplessness flowed down her face. She went to the bone marrow donation center, but still couldn't find a matching donor. The next day, Suun threatened Ji-young with a custody lawsuit. She told Ji-young to transfer her status as guardian to In-woo. Ji-young naturally didn't want to give the child to this shameless woman. Suun kept provoking Ji-young with her words. The foolish Ji-young once again fell into the trap. That day, Ji-young was preparing to receive an award. Her manager rushed in. Flustered, it turned out that Suun had posted Ji-young's words from yesterday out of context online. This put Ji-young, as a public figure, in the eye of the storm. Her manager advised her to issue a statement to explain, but Ji-young was unwilling to drag her ex-husband into it. She would rather take responsibility alone. In-woo's sister learned of this and severely humiliated Suun. Suun is not someone to be trifled with either, and immediately fired back. The two's argument was heard by In-woo outside the door. He questioned Suun as to why she had done this. Suun said that her father-in-law had told her to do it, and she had no choice but to obey. In-woo warned her that if she did this again, she would be waiting for a divorce. After saying this, he left Suun alone, watching the taillights of her husband's car as it drove away. Suun was a little panicked. Along the way, In-woo kept trying to contact Ji-young, but he couldn't get through, until he received a text message, after which he hurried to the hospital. It turned out that the child had once again developed pneumonia and was admitted to the intensive care unit. Watching Ji-young crying sadly inside, In-woo also felt a lot of remorse. At this time, Ji-young's husband also arrived at the hospital. He was full of hostility towards In-woo's appearance. Then he scolded In-woo's family for taking advantage of the child's illness to sue for custody. In-woo had no choice but to apologize repeatedly. At this time, Ji-young's mother also hurriedly arrived and saw her ex-son-in-law. She scolded him and was pulled away by Miho, who also spat on In-woo's face. Her mother scolded her daughter while crying. Ji-young said she would save her child, but the blood types of the biological parents did not match. So where could they find suitable bone marrow? Luckily, the heavens were merciful and the child in a coma had passed the critical stage. Ji-young held her son's hand and made up her mind. She found In-woo, who had been waiting all night, and told him that she would follow the doctor's advice and have another child with In-woo, and use the umbilical cord blood to save the child. Upstairs, Miho happened to see this scene. When he went downstairs, Ji-young's figure was no longer on the bench. He searched all over and finally saw Ji-young and the nurse in the obstetrics and gynecology department. He asked for some information and left. Miho walked over and asked for a copy as well. When he opened it, he realized it was a brochure for artificial insemination. Miho felt a pang of sadness in his heart. Disoriented, he returned to the ward. Ji-young saw her husband and couldn't help but feel guilty. In-woo, who had not returned home all night, came home. His sister persuaded him to tell his parents and wife about the baby's illness. However, In-woo did not want to do so. At this time, Suun ran out excitedly and said that the physiotherapy center had called and that she had hope of getting pregnant. However, In-woo did not react much and just returned to his room after saying a few perfunctory words. Suun chased after him and asked him to examine his heart and why he was not willing to say a kind word. While the two were arguing, the parents of the chaebol asked the maid to invite them over. It turned out that the father-in-law was complaining that Suun had failed to get the lawsuit started. He wanted to meet his first grandchild sooner rather than later. Although In-woo kept emphasizing that the baby was sick, Suun kept making things up. In the end, In-woo's sister helped her brother tell the truth. After Minho returned home, he took out a brochure on artificial insemination. If you really do that, we'll just get a divorce. Then he threw the brochure on the sofa and angrily returned to the bedroom. Ji-young leaned gently against her husband's back and said that she would not be able to live without a child. Miho questioned her. Then what do you think of the second child? Is it fair to him that you gave birth to him for the umbilical cord blood? But Ji-young at this time could not care less. She was willing to do anything to save her child. Miho pushed Ji-young aside and said, "If you want to have a child, have it with me." But the weeping Ji-young brought him to his senses. The dilemma of reality made this man cry bitterly. Suun, the scheming woman on this side, also sensed something unusual, since she knew that her child had leukemia. Why did her husband still not despair? In a casual chat with a colleague, she learned that the donor with the highest chance of matching the bone marrow is a sibling born to the same parents. Although Suun said she didn't believe her husband would do such a ridiculous thing, she was still a little uneasy. That night, when she got home, Suun pretended to be calm and deliberately asked In-woo what to do now. He's not thinking of having a second child with Ji-young, is he? In-woo was also honest and said that the only way to save the child now. Suun confirmed her suspicions and her anger immediately rose to the surface. In-woo was used to her hysterics and had long since become accustomed to it. He didn't even turn his head as he went back to the bedroom. Suun naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity. In-woo also feels guilty about the indifference of the past 6 years, so he asks her what she wants. Suun bluntly says that she wants the entire family conglomerate and asks him to think about whether Ji-young is really that important. The next day, Suun comes to the obstetrics and gynecology department with a last ray of hope for a checkup. However, the result is premature ovarian failure. This also means that she will never be able to get pregnant in her life. Unable to accept the reality, Suun looks at the pregnant women coming and going and remembers Ji-young's curse on her before. After much thought, she decided to agree to artificial insemination, but on the condition that the child be given to Suun to raise. Ji-young, of course, would never agree. She hated the woman in front of her. Ji-young returned home. The once lively and warm nest was now a lifeless place. She took out her child's piggy bank and recalled the happy times of the past. She couldn't help but kneel down and cry out loud. Ji-young didn't want to cause any more harm. She told In-woo that she had given up. Ji-young took out the photos of her son from childhood to adulthood and showed them to In-woo one by one. And then she handed the photos to In-woo to remember. Just as Ji-young got up to leave, In-woo ran over and held her back, and then they went to the hotel. In-woo gently wiped away the tears at the corner of Ji-young's eyes and then hugged her tightly. Ji-young pushed away the man in front of her at a critical moment. She felt that she was doing her current husband a great disservice. Ji-young seemed to have her soul extracted. Her mother noticed her strange behavior and asked if she had umbilical cord blood to save her child. Ji-young asked her mother to forget about it, although she also wanted to save her son. This was no reason to hurt her innocent husband. Ji-young said she would not let her child go alone. Her mother realized her daughter's despair and grief and pushed her to the ground. On the other side, Suun still had not given up. She knew that In-woo had just seen Ji-young and asked him what he had considered. It was then that In-woo realized that the condition Suun had set for Ji-young was for him to give the baby to Suun to raise. No wonder Ji-young had given up the idea of having a baby. But Suun said that Ji-young wanted to use the second child to force a divorce and return to the Chaebol family. In-woo felt that she was simply unreasonable and turned around and walked out of the house. Behind him, Suun broke down and yelled. In the hospital, Miho was with his son. His son suddenly asked if he was going to die soon. Miho was stunned. His son said that there was a piggy bank under his bed. The money in it was for his mother's birthday present. He asked his stepfather to help him fulfill his wish and to protect his mother instead. Miho held back his tears and said that it would only be meaningful if he bought his own birthday present. He would go with his son. Miho thought back to his first encounter with his son and Ji-young's love at first sight, and the happy and blissful life they had as a family. He couldn't help but burst into tears. He couldn't accept that his child was leaving him like this, so he called Ji-young and said that he had recently taken on a project and would often be working overnight and unable to return home. Miho said all the things he couldn't say to Ji-young face to face. He asked Ji-young to undergo artificial insemination to save the child. Perhaps this is the pain and obligation that comes with being a parent. The next day, Ji-young's mother came to the hospital to see Ji-young, since Ji-young's brother died in an accident. Her mother had been living in pain. She told Ji-young not to give up and to fight for even the slightest hope. Ji-young ate the cake her mother brought with her. The sweetness in her mouth could not hide the bitterness in her heart. Ji-young took her son's hand and thought of Suun's words. At that moment, her son woke up and told her that he wanted to go home. Ji-young instantly felt relieved. She put aside all worldly prejudices. No price was too high to stop her from saving her son, so artificial insemination was put on the agenda. Ji-young also successfully got pregnant. Suun finds In-woo and asks him to fulfill his promise. In-woo advises her not to push herself to the limit, but now Suun has no choice. She must have a child to secure her position as the daughter-in-law of a Chaebol family. In-woo has no choice but to play along with her. He tells her father that his wife is 8 weeks pregnant. Suun's nervous heart finally settles down. The Chaebol parents are overjoyed. Only her sister feels that something is fishy. That day, the Chaebol mother-in-law was going to reward Suun for her pregnancy with a gold toad. But when she entered the bedroom, she found evidence that her daughter-in-law was faking her pregnancy. Just then, In-woo returned and saw the fake belly in his mother's hands. In-woo had no choice but to tell his mother the truth. His mother scolded them for not telling their parents. She also said that given Suun's character, she might raise the baby well now. But what if she had her own child in the future? In-woo had no choice but to tell his mother that Suun had premature ovarian failure and could not get pregnant. His mother said that Suun would have to have her own child in order to get the company's shares. In-woo said that Suun would raise the child well because she also understood this very well. At this time, Suun in the room did not know that her secret had been revealed. Seeing that it had started to snow, she couldn't help but run outside and dance. Seeing her so happy, the Chaebol mother-in-law decided not to expose her lie. The next day, Suun asked Ji-young to meet her and handed her a signed agreement. She was afraid that Ji-young would change her mind and fight for custody. Ji-young felt there was no need to sign. She said she would definitely raise the baby well. Suun questioned her confidence. Ji-young said that if she didn't do it, she wouldn't get the company's shares. Suun didn't insist any further and tore up the agreement. However, she did make a request. She wanted to feel the baby. Everything seemed to be developing for the better. But then Miho learned from a conversation with a client that all the recent projects he had taken on were secretly helped by In-woo. Otherwise it would be impossible for his small company to get these projects. Miho's pride was greatly hurt. He found In-woo and asked if Ji-young had told him to do so. In-woo explained that it was his idea to do what little he could to help. But Miho felt so angry. He felt that he was the father of the child, and this pride was trampled on. In-woo apologizes for his inconsideration. Miho takes out the money for the meal, throws it on the table, gets up and leaves alone. He goes home with a forced smile. The affection between the once harmonious couple is now replaced by awkward glances. Fortunately, Jack still misses his stepfather a lot. A big hug from him temporarily comforts Miho's wounded heart. He makes an excuse that he has to go back to work overtime because the company's new project has just started. Ji-young understands that he can't face himself. Miho proposes that Jack move out of Seoul and leave after the transplant. But seeing Ji-young's dazed expression, Miho felt a wave of despondency in his heart. He walked out of the house. Ji-young hurried after him, but all she saw was Miho's receding back. At that moment, Ji-young felt a sharp pain in her stomach. She wrote a note to her mother, who had gone out to buy groceries, telling her to take good care of the baby. Then she took a taxi alone to the hospital. In-woo, who was sleeping, received a call from Ji-young. With the help of the doctor, Ji-young successfully gave birth to a baby boy, but she only got to see her baby for a moment before she slowly closed her eyes. The whole family pushed Jack to the transplant surgery. Suun also got to hold the baby as she wished. The Chaebol in-laws were overjoyed. Ji-young, who was gradually losing vital signs, was receiving full medical attention. Ji-young's mother held her cold feet and begged her to wake up quickly. The Chaebol family was overjoyed at the arrival of the new life. Suun finally managed to retain her status as the wealthy family's daughter-in-law. In-woo went outside the ward and saw Ji-young's mother holding her daughter and crying sadly. He couldn't hold back his tears either and burst into tears. Just then, Ji-young's mother came over and asked In-woo to bring the baby to her, letting Ji-young feel the baby's warmth might make her wake up. In-woo went home, ignored Suun, and went straight to the baby's room to pick up the baby. He said that the one who needed the baby most was Ji-young. Suun of course could not let him just take the baby away like that. In-woo said, "If you keep blocking me, I'll tell father that you didn't give birth to the baby," and then pushed Suun to the ground. When the baby was placed next to Ji-young's pillow, the monitor suddenly fluctuated. In-woo knelt down and cried, saying that he would definitely let the child grow up happily. At this time, deep in Ji-young's consciousness, she was heading to a place called heaven. A boy called out to her from behind. She remembered her promise with God. "I must never see this child again in this life." Tears of joy and sorrow streamed down her face in the hospital bed. After recovering, Ji-young moved to the countryside as her husband suggested. Jack pats his mother's belly and asks where his brother has gone. Ji-young tells him that his brother lives on in our hearts. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. Jack has grown into a handsome young man. Ji-young is also enjoying the simple life of a housewife. One day, Jack comes home and takes off his mask to find traces of blood. He is afraid that his parents will find out. He quickly covered his nose and ran into the bathroom. That night, he talked to Sumin, the girl he secretly liked. Sumin asked him what his wish was. Jack froze for a few seconds, trying to think of a wish that would make him live to be 20. But he didn't want to worry Sumin, so he deleted the message he had typed. Blood ties are truly a strange thing. Jack had an innate interest in architectural design. He applied to the local architecture school. The teacher happened to be a good friend of In-woo's. Of course, these coincidences must have been arranged by In-woo with money. He followed Jack home from school. His friend took the initiative to stop Jack and let him say hello to his friend. It was the first time he had talked to his son so closely. In-woo's heart was full of mixed emotions. Since the arrival of his grandson, the group's business has been booming. Suun has also completely solidified her position as the wealthy family's daughter-in-law. She is never afraid of her sister-in-law's sarcasm, but since her son likes to see her on TV, she invests in a program at the TV station. Because of the casting, there are a lot of conflicts. At this time, the director and producer remember someone who can do the job, so he drives to the place where this person is living in seclusion. What he doesn't know is that this person is exactly the person Suun least wants to see. On the first day, Ji-young returns to work. She sees Suun walking towards her with a boy. Motherly instinct makes Ji-young immediately recognize that the boy is her youngest son. She slowly walked over, knelt down, and reached out to touch the boy she had been dreaming about for 10 years. But Suun pulled the boy behind her. Ji-young was petrified and stood there, watching Suun pull the boy away and turn around. It was only then that Ji-young learned from her agent that the resident guest on the new show she had returned to host was actually Suun. Suun also found the show's producer and threatened to quit the show if Ji-young hosted. Soon the two enemies met at a coffee shop. Ji-young asked the child's name, but Suun felt no need to tell her. She had no regard for Ji-young's feelings, and this hurt Ji-young deeply, so she threatened Suun not to cancel the show. But Suun was very disdainful. Ji-young said not to force herself or she would definitely meet the child. Suun was momentarily stunned. Ji-young returned home and told her mother that she had seen the child. Her mother blurted out, "How is Tom?" Ji-young asked her mother how she knew the name. It turned out that when she was carrying the baby and went to save Ji-young, In-woo had told her mother. Ji-young's emotions instantly flared up after hearing this. All these years, she has been very guilty. Every time she thinks of her youngest son, she can only say, "That child," and her mother has long known but she never told her. Her mother advised her to forget about this child. He has nothing to do with you now. Ji-young broke down and burst into tears after hearing this. No one could understand her sadness and despair over the years. That night, her mother came to Ji-young's house and handed her an envelope. Inside were photos of Tom from childhood to adulthood. It turned out that In-woo had sent photos every month for 10 years, but her mother had never mentioned the past to Ji-young, so she didn't give them to her, for fear of causing her more trouble. Her mother persuaded her to just look at the photos and not to participate in the show again. Otherwise, her current husband would be very sorry if he knew. On the other side, In-woo was creating an opportunity. He asked his friend to bring Jack to dinner. Then his friend left Jack alone with In-woo, saying that he had a sudden engagement. Jack was a bit uncomfortable and said that he was just a child, afraid that In-woo would find him childish and boring. What he didn't know was that the man in front of him was his biological father. Just then, Ji-young called to ask if she should come pick him up herself. Jack lied to his mother and said that he and his classmates wanted to play for a while longer. After hanging up the phone, Jack felt sorry for lying to his mother. In-woo felt relieved at his simplicity. When In-woo asked him why he wanted to study architectural design, Jack obviously lost his initial awkwardness and opened up instantly. In-woo looked at his son, who was talking non-stop in front of him, and his heart was full of compassion. When they walked out of the restaurant and said goodbye, In-woo suddenly stopped Jack and said that he felt that Jack was very impressive and wanted to encourage him. In-woo hugged his eldest son for the first time. Joy mixed with guilt, and tears could not help but well up in his eyes. On the other side, Miho also learned that his wife was on the same stage as Suun. He called Ji-young over to ask for an explanation. Ji-young unbuttoned her blouse to reveal the blood marks from the scratches. Miho froze on the spot when he saw this. Ever since the baby was forcibly taken away after birth, the sound of the baby crying has been haunting Ji-young's mind. She could only use the pain in her body to cover the pain in her heart. Miho walked up to hug his wife and regretted that he had not been able to understand her pain sooner. Suun goes to her mother-in-law's house to pick up her son Tom. She is mocked by In-woo's sister, who says she will watch her show on time in the future. It must be very interesting for sworn enemies to act on stage. Suun really can't swallow this, so she quarrels with her sister. When the mother-in-law hears this, she comes out and says that she wants to keep her grandson overnight tonight. Suun has no choice but to leave alone. Suun, who has just walked downstairs, is so frustrated that she explodes. When she returned to the bedroom, she saw In-woo there, also persuading her not to participate in the show. Suun knew that it was because of Ji-young that her husband pretended to care about her. This undoubtedly aroused her competitiveness, and she was determined not to back down. Early the next morning, Suun wanted to overwhelm Ji-young with her momentum. Just as she was about to go out to the TV station, her mother-in-law stopped her. She said bluntly, "Just quit the show." Suun said, "Tom really likes watching my show." Her mother-in-law is worried that the reporters will make a fuss about Ji-young being In-woo's ex-wife, but Suun still refuses to give up. Her mother-in-law can only sigh. At this time, Suun still doesn't realize that her mother-in-law actually knows that Tom is not her biological child. Everyone at the TV station complains that Suun is always late. Suun appears in time and greets Ji-young. After the program is recorded, Ji-young calls her husband Miho and says that she will come pick him up later because she is having a dinner with her colleagues. Suun caught up with her again and insisted on going to the restaurant together. She thought Ji-young was doing this job because she had material needs. Suun said she could provide some compensation, but she would not allow Ji-young to meet her family. But Ji-young said she only wanted the baby and nothing else. Suun asked Ji-young why she had to stir up trouble after so many years. She didn't know that she should not have taken Tom away from Ji-young right away on that day. Ji-young felt that she was too ruthless and didn't care about the feelings of a mother at all. Suun didn't realize that Ji-young had become so ruthless. Ji-young said, "I have nothing to lose. You are afraid of losing because you have gained too much." Suun was speechless for a while. Everyone at the dinner party talked and laughed. Suun called In-woo and asked him to come pick her up later. If he sent his secretary to pick her up, she would stand outside all night. After the dinner, Suun pretended to be very surprised and said that her husband had come to pick her up, but In-woo just stared at Ji-young. Fortunately, at that moment, Ji-young's husband Miho also drove up. In-woo had to watch Ji-young get into the car and leave. On the way, Suun warned In-woo that in the future, they could only meet like this and could not meet Ji-young in private. However, things did not go as planned. What you fear will come true. At the charity competition organized by In-woo's sister, Jack and Tom stood on the same starting line. When In-woo looked at the stadium, he saw that the person standing next to Tom was actually Jack, who was warming up. In-woo's smile froze for a moment. He asked his sister if she had deliberately arranged for Jack to participate in the competition, but his sister looked completely confused and had no knowledge of the matter. In-woo didn't want to reveal his identity just yet, so he turned around and left the stadium. His sister held him back, saying that the event would start soon and persuading him that it was time to admit who he was. In-woo firmly told her to send someone else to give a speech. At that moment, Suun rushed over to cheer for her son and asked what the two were arguing about. Ji-young, who was worried about Jack's health, also hurried to the swimming pool. This was embarrassing for everyone. They all looked at each other and froze in place. From afar, Jack and Tom also saw their respective mothers. Ji-young was instantly at a loss when she saw both of her sons running over. In-woo took Ji-young's hand and ran out without any regard for his wife. Suun called out to the little boy who had run over and asked him his name. Suun couldn't believe her eyes. Her sister came over and made peace, telling Jack to hurry to the competition. Suun angrily questioned her sister if she had deliberately let Jack come into contact with Tom. Her sister said that if she wanted to deal with her, she wouldn't have done that. Suun angrily ran out to look for her husband, but she couldn't see him or Ji-young anywhere. Ji-young, who was hiding in the corner, let go of In-woo's hand. She felt that In-woo's character definitely wasn't one that would be afraid of her seeing Tom, so she asked him if he had known about Jack's identity from the beginning. In-woo had to admit and explain that he just wanted to watch Jack from afar. Ji-young thanked him for sending her photos of Tom every month. She also understood how much pain In-woo had felt when she took Jack away. However, she advised In-woo not to make any more unnecessary sacrifices, and that she would not do anything to hurt her current husband. In-woo promised not to go near Jack again, and Ji-young suddenly felt a little sorry for In-woo. She hoped that the two of them would not get entangled in the future and would each take care of their own families. After saying that, she was about to leave, but In-woo called out to stop her. In-woo wanted to tell Ji-young that he was willing to put aside everything and start over with her, but the words that came to his lips became "I hope you will be happy in the future." Watching the back of the beloved person leaving, In-woo's heart aches like a knife. Here, my sister is still lamenting the incredible arrangement of fate that has caused the two children to meet like this. She also deliberately discourages Suun by saying that Jack is the eldest grandson of the family. Suun says that the chaebol father-in-law will never admit it. My sister smiled and said, "You don't understand your father at all. He is just waiting for Jack to come home on his own initiative." Suun immediately felt a sense of crisis. At this time, Ji-young arrived at the bleachers. Jack waved to greet his mother. Tom also waved his hand. Ji-young looked at her two sons with mixed feelings. Suun couldn't sit still when she saw this scene. On the way back, Tom kept talking about meeting a brother. Suun instantly became furious and said that it was not a brother at all and that he should never mention it again. That day, Jack noticed that there was a bloodstain on his mask. He immediately ran to the bathroom and washed away the nosebleed with water. Jack realized that his leukemia may have returned. He didn't want to worry his mother, so he made an excuse and got past it. That night, when he was cycling home, he was stopped by a girl he had always had a crush on. Jack opened the Coca-Cola and drank it without thinking, but then the girl suddenly took out another bottle and said, "This is Coke for lovers. If you drink it, you have to be my boyfriend." Jack was so scared that he spit out the Coke in his mouth. It turned out that the girl wanted to take a couple photo with him and post it on the internet. Jack naturally gladly agreed to the date. Early the next morning, Jack was struggling to decide which clothes to wear when his stepfather walked in and carefully helped him choose a yellow jacket. The breeze blew, the sun shone, and the young man ran recklessly for love. When Jack saw the girl across the street, he waved at her, but the girl didn't notice him. Jack continued running excitedly, but as he ran, he suddenly felt like he couldn't catch his breath. He felt dizzy and collapsed on the side of the road. A father and son passing by found him. In a daze, Jack heard the child call out to his father. He suddenly remembered that when he was a child, there was an uncle who kept watching him outside the hospital, but he couldn't see his face clearly. It wasn't until the kind father and son woke him up. The girl had already arrived at the date location and disappeared without waiting for Jack. When Jack ran panting to the bench, there was no longer any trace of the girl. Recalling what had happened to him recently, Jack went online to look up the symptoms of a leukemia relapse. The results were the same as his own symptoms. He was very scared because he still had a lot to accomplish. He asked his grandmother, "Who was the man who was always outside the hospital room when I was sick before? Why was he crying when he looked at me?" Grandma didn't know how to answer for a while, so she just said that it had been so long ago that she had forgotten, and advised him not to think too much about it, that it might just be a dream. The next day, Ji-young sent Jack to school and accidentally learned that his teacher was In-woo's best friend. She realized that In-woo must have been the one who had been secretly needing Jack. Ji-young angrily confronted In-woo and told him that Miho was Jack's father. "You have no right to take Jack away from me." In-woo repeatedly explained that he had no such intention, but Ji-young was already consumed by anger. She even spoke of the reason for her decision back then. At that time, she didn't hate In-woo for his betrayal, but the fact that he married Suun less than 3 months after the divorce. Ji-young felt that in In-woo's heart, neither she nor the newborn Jack were as important as Suun and the child she was carrying. After she finished speaking, she turned around without looking back and left. In-woo never got the chance to defend himself the whole time, and could only laugh bitterly at himself. Meanwhile, after class, Jack hesitantly asked his teacher's friend why he hadn't been coming lately. The teacher asked if he had a message to pass on. Jack said that he had promised to go look at the building with him last time. The teacher wrote down In-woo's phone number and gave it to Jack, telling him to contact him himself. Ji-young had just returned home when her mother started talking about Jack. She asked Ji-young about him. She said that children would definitely be curious about their fathers when they grew up. Ji-young said that Jack's father was Miho, but the more her mother talked, the more agitated she became. She said that she shouldn't have signed the divorce agreement back then. She also accidentally revealed the truth about Suun's miscarriage. It turned out that when her mother learned that her daughter's husband had been taken away by Suun, she was very angry. The next day, she rushed to Suun's office. At this time, Suun was suffering from severe abdominal pain and blood was flowing from her lower body. Her mother pushed open the office door and angrily rebuked Suun for repaying kindness with evil and having no sense of shame. While struggling, Suun took advantage of the situation and collapsed to the ground. Ji-young's mother was a little at a loss. At this time, Suun's assistant came in and saw the scene, and loudly asked Ji-young's mother what she had done. Although she tried to explain that she had done nothing, her mother was still taken into custody for questioning. Suun blamed Ji-young's mother for the miscarriage and sued her. In-woo came to beg his father to withdraw the lawsuit, but his father was still angry and scolded In-woo without mercy for not having a grandchild. Seeing that his son was still begging, his father made a condition that In-woo and Suun get married immediately. In-woo had no choice but to nod his head and agree. After listening to her mother's words, Ji-young scolded her mother for not telling her at the time. Her mother said that you guys have already divorced. There is no need to make things more complicated. Ji-young remembered the harsh words she said to In-woo yesterday, and she felt a lot of regret in her heart. She ran out of the house, started the car, and drove away regardless of Miho's pursuit. She called In-woo to tell him her remorse and apologize. In-woo, who received the call, also drove to the meeting place alone under Suun's watchful eye. He now only wanted to win back the woman he loved. At this moment, Miho suddenly called, facing her husband's questioning. Ji-young was so distracted that she almost hit the oncoming truck. Although she was safe, it also made Ji-young's mind calm down. Her husband's words of concern brought her back to reality. Ji-young watched In-woo's car drive past in front of her, and thought that the love that the two of them had already missed in their respective families could never return. So she turned the car around and stopped going to the appointment. At sunset, by the lake, In-woo was the only one still waiting. He waited until nightfall, but he didn't wait for his beloved. When he returned home in a lost state, what awaited him was a heartbroken wife. In-woo explained that it was because he had not been able to resolve the previous knot in his heart that he went to Ji-young. Suun instantly became furious, accusing In-woo of shamelessly wanting to renew their relationship. Facing this wife who never understood him, In-woo didn't want to argue and got up to leave the bedroom. Unexpectedly, all these years of sacrifice were just to take the position of daughter-in-law in the wealthy family in In-woo's eyes. Suun was disheartened for a moment. The next day, Suun called In-woo's personal secretary and learned that her husband had recently been visiting Jack frequently. She was originally very angry and arranged to meet Ji-young to argue, but when she arrived, Suun's attitude softened. She apologized to Ji-young, asking her not to shake her family apart and not to take her son away. But Ji-young had already seen through her. Tom was just a means for her to get a stake in the company. Suun recounted the past 10 years, saying that she had treated Tom like her own child. Suun said, "You didn't sign the agreement to give up custody because you were planning to renege on it today." Ji-young said, "Back then, you were so heartless. And now I'm going to show you the pain of losing everything you have." Suun knows that there is no way to resolve their hatred. After she finishes speaking, she bumps into Ji-young and walks away. The battle between the two women has begun. Jack wakes up in the morning and sees bruises all over his body. He realizes that his leukemia has returned. He is so scared. Jack knows that he doesn't have much time left. At that moment, he hears his mother's voice outside the house. He quickly gets dressed to hide it. Today is the day he receives his high school admission notice. Ji-young carefully wraps a scarf around her son's neck, and her husband Miho. They share this joyous moment with their son. Jack suppresses the pain in his heart and suggests going out for a meal as a family. Ji-young has never allowed him to eat outside food since he was a child, but this time she agrees to make an exception. Unexpectedly, the owner of the snack bar is a fan of Ji-young and is excited to take a photo with his idol. Jack patiently helps them take the photo. After they walk out of the shop, Jack says, "Let's go take a family photo too." When he was young, he had leukemia. His mother had no choice but to give birth to a child with her ex-husband and use the umbilical cord blood to save his life. His stepfather has always treated him like his own son. Jack doesn't want to end his life like this. After taking the family portrait, he told his mother that he wanted to take a solo photo. Ji-young thought he was preparing an ID photo for high school, but what she didn't know was that her son was already preparing for his death. The next day, Jack came to school and found the girl he liked there. The pranks played by his classmates made him feel so embarrassed that he didn't know what to do. Jack ran all the way home. His grandmother thought something had happened to him and hurried upstairs to ask him what was wrong. He said that he had finished school early today. When his grandmother hung up his jacket, she found a note. She opened it and saw that it was In-woo's phone number. His grandmother asked him why he had this person's phone number. Jack asked his grandmother why she knew him. His grandmother didn't know how to answer. Jack said, "Isn't this the uncle who visited me when I was in the hospital as a child?" His grandmother pretended to be ignorant and let Jack keep asking. She just said that she didn't remember, but Jack already had an answer in his heart. He rode his bike all the way back, Thinking back to every encounter with Inwoo before, the lively conversations over meals and that warm embrace, the images in his memory gradually became clearer. He finally saw the face outside the hospital room. Jack couldn't accept it for a while. He fell to the ground in a daze. Grandma at home found Ji-young at this time and said that Inwoo must have met Jack. She also said that she couldn't hide it anymore. She suggested just telling Jack the truth. But Ji-young is still worried about her husband's feelings. After all, he has always treated Jack like his own son. But her mother's words also made her hesitate a little. On this side, Jack found Inwoo and suggested finding a place to eat and chat. Immediately, he questioned Inwoo whether he was his biological father. Inwoo gave a positive answer. Jack questioned him why he abandoned his mother and himself. Inwoo apologized again and again, asking Jack to give him another chance to make amends. Jack said that you have always had a chance, but you didn't take it. Inwoo tried to hug him, but he was pushed away. He could only watch Jack right away in pain. Ji-young learned that her best friend had used an abortion to frame her mother. She regretted her decision not to let Suun hold her newborn baby. Suun wanted to fight back, but she was intimidated by Ji-young's aura. Ji-young felt that such a sinister woman would never treat her child sincerely. Suun was completely angered. Ji-young said, "You will live in fear from now on." As she turned to leave, Suun grabbed her hand. Ji-young gave a contemptuous laugh. Suun suddenly felt a little scared. Suun forced herself to be brave and returned home. Her son came out and hugged her. This temporarily soothed her uneasy heart. At that moment, her mother-in-law came out and said that Tom wanted to go out and play on his day off. Tom said he wanted to go to the house of the older brother he met at the competition. Suun became anxious when she heard this and said, "You are not allowed to make friends with that kind of child." Her mother-in-law was obviously very unhappy with her attitude, and said that sooner or later the two children would have to get to know each other. Suun felt a wave of panic in her heart. In fact, her mother-in-law had long known that Tom was not her biological child. She just didn't want to burst the bubble. Suun went to find her husband and asked him if he had told her mother-in-law about the fake pregnancy back then. Inwoo hesitated for a moment and said no, but Suun still felt uneasy in her heart. Over the years, she had treated the child as if it were her own, and she wondered if he would be able to live with himself. Suun grabs her husband's hand and asks him to promise that he will stand by her. Inwoo looks at her without saying anything. The next day, the Chaebol grandfather asks about the charity competition. My sister shows him a photo. The old man is very happy that his grandson Tom has won an award. Then he asks who the person standing next to Tom is. My sister says it's your eldest grandson, Jack. The old man instantly becomes furious and scolds his daughter for showing him this. Suun doesn't understand why her sister, who has just gained the old man's trust, would do something so unthankful. My sister said, "You don't know my father at all." Now Jack is imprinted in his mind. It won't be long before he asks for his eldest grandson back. This really made Suun angry. Chairman Wu waited until his daughter and daughter-in-law left, then went online to check the photo again. He sighed. Jack is indeed the bloodline of his family. No matter how big the illness, he has overcome it. The old chairman is also a hot-tempered person. The next day, he asked Ji-young out. He wanted Jack to go back and recognize his roots. Ji-young said, "You have no right to ask me." The chairman said, "I'm not here to ask for your opinion. I'm just here to let you know." Then he told the driver to go to the school and pick up Jack. The grandfather and grandson finally met formally for the first time. Jack knew that there would be a day like this when he found out who his father was. The grandfather said, "A boy must find out his own background. You are the eldest grandson of the family. You are destined to come back and inherit the family business." Jack said that his parents had had a hard time raising him and that he wanted to give them some compensation. The grandfather laughed and said, "You can repay them in any way you want after you've done well." But Jack still insisted on a promise. Grandpa thought he was just being a child. In fact, Jack was making amends for his mother and adoptive father after his death. After returning home, the chairman immediately called a family meeting to inform everyone that Jack was to be taken back. His sister immediately raised her hand to agree. Suun was anxious to hear this and expressed her opposition, but the chairman's decision was not something that she, as a daughter-in-law, could veto. Back here, Jack, upon returning home, looked at himself in the mirror and saw the bruises all over his body. He knew that his life was not long. He found the girl he had always secretly loved and hoped to start over with a date. But the girl still hasn't forgiven him for breaking their previous date. Just as the girl turns to leave, Jack calls out to her and says those three words. Jack met someone he liked at a young age, and it was like a ray of light entering his gloomy life. In order to leave his parents with an unforgettable memory, Jack suggested that the whole family go camping and have a picnic. Grandma also hurried over, only to find that it was another simulated picnic. Looking at the stars in the sky, Jack remembered when he was a child and was too sick to go camping. His mother set up a tent at home, and his stepfather hung up many little stars. He cherished the lively reunion in front of him, but Jack had something he had to say. He said he had seen his grandfather. Ji-young and the others were stunned. Jack said he was going to stay at his grandfather's house for a few days. Grandma was anxious and said not to get involved with that family, but Jack said, They are also my family. These words completely defeated Ji Young. She silently got up and went into the house. Grandma hurriedly pulled Jack in and asked him to reconsider and give up the idea. Jack said, "If I don't go now, I won't have time later." Grandma was shocked. Jack explained that he would have no time after high school. Ji Young said, "Go if you want to." Then she told her son to go upstairs and rest. Grandma was angry and anxious, saying that once the child goes to his grandfather's house, he will definitely not be able to come back. But Ji Young knew that this day would come sooner or later. The next day, the old chairman sent a car to pick him up. Miho reluctantly put Jack on the car. Ji Young rushed out of the house and watched the car getting further and further away. She cried in her husband's arms, heartbroken. At this time, everyone in the mansion was waiting for Jack's arrival. After Jack said hello to his grandfather, his grandmother hugged him tightly. His aunt also welcomed his arrival. Suun took Jack to Inwoo. Tom happily hugged him and called him brother. Inwoo suppressed his inner excitement and greeted him lightly. Then Luo Ming took him to the upstairs room. At this time, without outsiders, Suun also revealed her stepmother's face. She warned Jack to be aware of his status and to listen to the elders. Before leaving, she didn't forget to ask if it was your mother who told you to come. Jack said directly that he wanted to come. Suun said that Tom didn't know anything and not to tell him nonsense. After that, she took out a set of clothes from the closet and told Jack to change and go downstairs. Seeing his handsome eldest son, Inwoo, for the first time, he carefully helped him tie his tie like a father would. Grandpa led Jack to pay respect to the ancestors, formally announcing his adoption. At this time, the family was having dinner. Auntie told Tom to get along with his brother. Tom said, "I will. Mom told me that my brother is from a poor family and we should help him more." Everyone was stunned after hearing this. It turned out that Suun had deliberately made up an excuse because she didn't want Tom and Jack to get too close. Inwoo said, "I understand how you feel, but you can't distort the truth." Jack finally realized what it was like to have a chaebol grandfather. All the leaders of the group had to line up to greet him. Grandpa even announced in public that Jack was the family's eldest grandson and would be the heir to the group in the future. This made Suun furious. Back in the office, she just vented. She asked Ji Young out and questioned her why she had sent Jack back. She also said that this would make Jack jealous and bully the young Tom. Although Ji Young said that Jack is very simple and will definitely love Tom as a younger brother. Suun said that this is just wishful thinking on your part. Jack is experiencing the glory of being the eldest grandson in the family. Will he ever return to being just an ordinary Jack? Suun then took a bag out of the trunk and handed it to Ji Young, saying that it was Jack's personal belongings. Grandpa Chaebol was going to send someone to throw them away. Suun was going to throw them away. So you should go and do it. Ji Young felt very uncomfortable in her heart. When she returned home in a daze, her grandmother saw the clothes she had brought back and angrily cursed. How there could be such a heartless family in the world. She told Ji Young to hurry and bring Jack back. Ji Young stroked her son's clothes in pain and grief. Grandma was really unwilling, so she went to the company alone. Just then, she saw Jack and the chaebol grandfather come out together. She embraced Jack and asked Jack to go home with her, but Jack said he would go back in a few days. Then he turned around and quickly caught up with his grandfather, leaving his grandmother alone and in tears. The chaebol grandfather took him to an empty field and said he wanted to build a unique smart city. "If I can't finish it, you'll have to take over my business." After saying this, the grandfather took out a compass he had treasured for many years and handed it to Jack. "If you ever feel like your life has lost its direction, just set it on the ground. It will show you where you truly belong." After returning home, Suun found Jack. Her father-in-law's behavior today made her feel a sense of crisis. She felt the need to remind Jack of one thing. "Jack Sook, it seems you don't like me." Suun asked in return, "Do you like me?" and got a negative answer. But this was what Suun expected. It would be hypocritical to say that they like each other. In the evening, Inwoo came to talk to Jack, persuading him to go back early and not to worry his mother. But Jack coldly replied, "Uncle, you have no right to worry about my mother. And you said last time that you wanted me to give you a chance. Now I'm giving you a chance to make amends. Are you going to drive me away again?" Inwoo hurriedly said that he didn't mean it that way. Jack said he didn't have much time. Inwoo was puzzled. Jack didn't plan to tell him about his leukemia relapse. He just said he wanted to spend more time with his grandparents and would also accompany Tom well. Jack got up after he finished talking and said he had something to do. Inwoo wanted to make another effort, hoping he wouldn't let his mother wait too long. He looked at his expressionless son and had to turn away. Hearing the sound of the door closing, Jack's tears couldn't help but fall. That day, Jack returned from swimming with his younger brother. While Jack went upstairs to change, Tom told his mother that his brother was acting strangely and had many bruises on his body. Suun was very puzzled. Tom said, "Did my brother get bullied by bad guys?" Suun told him not to think about it. At this time, Jack returned to his room and wrote on his bucket list that he hoped to travel alone before he died. But a drop of blood fell on his clothes. It turned out that he had started nosebleeding again. He quickly ran to the bathroom to wash it off. Just then, Suun walked in and saw the notebook on the desk. She walked over curiously, and Jack's secret of dying was discovered. Suun lifted his shirt to reveal the bruises all over his body. Thinking of the bucket list on the table and the bloodstains on Jack's clothes, Suun asked him what had happened. Jack lied and said he had just hit the table. Suun was still not convinced and asked him if he was having a relapse. Jack froze for a moment and pretended to be calm, arguing that he had been catching a cold recently. Suun looked at his twinkling eyes and knew he was lying. She told him that she would tell his mother about this. Jack said, "You don't like it? But don't bully my mother." Suun was so angry that she turned around and walked out. Ji-young and her husband were also trying to adapt to life without Jack. They put on a happy face to hide their sadness. At that moment, Jack called on the video phone. During the call, Tom walked in. When he saw his young son appear on the screen, Ji-young was stunned. The son he had fought so hard to give life to was now staring back at him. Ji-young saw how well the two brothers got along. She drained her glass in one go. The wine was sweet, but her heart was bitter. Suun came downstairs with mixed feelings. A bad feeling made her hands tremble as she poured water. She opened her phone and searched for information on leukemia recurrence. The results matched what she had just seen. In-woo arrived home at that moment. Suun was shocked and wanted to tell In-woo what had happened, but before she could, In-woo misunderstood her and told her not to get involved with Jack. Suun didn't want to get involved either and watched her husband's back as he walked away. Suun then went to her in-laws' room and saw the family tree on the table. It turned out that her father-in-law had been prepared. He asked Suun to legally make Jack a member of the family as soon as possible. Suun said that this would require Jack's consent, but her father-in-law didn't care about that. In the end, Suun had to make a request, for the time being, not to let Tom know about Jack's identity. That day, after listening to his grandmother's account of the past 10 years, Jack realized that Tom was his real younger brother. Jack thought about his mother's suffering over the years and went back to his room alone to cry bitterly. Just then, Tom walked in. He apologized to his brother for his earlier outburst. Jack hugged him and wept uncontrollably. He gave his brother the compass as a gift. The brothers finally made up. In-woo couldn't help but smile like an old father as he watched this heartwarming scene. From then on, whenever he sent a photo to his mother, Jack would always include a photo with Tom. Although Grandma was a little worried and felt that Jack might not want to come back, Ji-young was still very happy to see the two brothers getting along so well, and Jack was always hanging out with Tom, as if he wanted to make up for the 10 years he had lost. Knowing everything, Grandma finally let go of her worries. One day, the girl Jack had a crush on came to his house because she hadn't seen him for a few days and asked around. She discovered that Jack's mother was her idol, Ji-young, and quickly asked her to take a photo together. The girl forgot all about looking for Jack. When Jack saw the photo his mother sent, a bold idea came to mind. He asked his brother if he wanted to go to his house to play. Tom was so happy that he almost jumped up. The two brothers got dressed and were ready to go out. When Suun came home after work and learned that Tom was going out with Jack, she couldn't help but feel a pang of panic in her heart. She quickly asked In-woo to get the phone and dial Jack. At this time, Jack was already on his way home. He didn't hide his itinerary when he received the call. This made Suun anxious. In-woo picked up the phone and asked the two what they were doing. Jack said directly, "Grandma has already told me everything." Unaware, Suun tried to ask again, but Jack simply hung up. Suun hurriedly drove the car at full speed, while calling Ji-young on the phone to scold her for her treacherous tricks. Ji-young was puzzled and hurriedly ran outside to check, only to see her two sons running towards her together. The three of them finally embraced. Ji-young embraced her youngest son, whom she had missed for 10 years. For the first time, the feeling of kinship was truly wonderful. Ji-young brought Tom into the house and carefully wrapped him in a blanket. Seeing Ji-young's helplessness, Miho thoughtfully said, "I'll go cook something for the kids." But Ji-young had been waiting for 10 years to cook for her son. She must personally cook a dinner full of the taste of her mother for her son. On this side, the family is reunited and happy. Over there, Suun is going crazy. She keeps calling Ji-young's phone but no one answers. In-woo is also on his way. Suun asks him to quickly find Ji-young's address, but In-woo asks her to calm down and let him handle it. At this time, Jack also found his mother's phone in the attic, so he went downstairs and handed it to her. Suun finally got Ji-young on the phone. Ji-young asked her to meet her at the intersection. Suun asked her to bring Tom with her. The old chairman inside the villa was furious when he learned about this. Fortunately, Grandma took the blame and said she had agreed to Jack's actions. The old chairman could only vent his anger at his daughter-in-law, saying that she would not be allowed to set foot in the house until she brought back her two sons. Ji-young found Suun alone and said she wanted Tom to stay for a few days. Suun instantly became furious. Didn't they say they wouldn't see Tom at all? But now Ji-young felt that Tom had returned to her like a miracle. She wanted to keep him for a few more days and then send him back. Naturally, Suun would not believe. Ji-young had previously threatened to take Tom back, so how could she now let her son stay? Suun threatened to call the police. Just as the situation was at a stalemate, Ji-young's mother happened to walk over. When she heard that Ji-young had brought Tom back, she knew that Suun must have come to take the child. Suun said that she would report Ji-young for kidnapping. Mom was furious when she heard this. 10 years ago, Suun almost sent Ji-young's mother to prison by using the abortion incident. Mom threatened to tell everyone the truth about Tom if Suun went to court against Ji-young. Suun felt guilty when she saw her threatening to take them both down. Luckily, In-woo arrived in time. After hearing Ji-young's request, In-woo had no choice but to agree. Suun tried to stop her, but In-woo held her back. In her heart, the position of daughter-in-law in a wealthy family was the most important thing. In-woo was very disappointed and took Suun by force to the car and took her away. Suun had always worried about this day since the day she raised Tom. In-woo comforted her, saying that he would handle everything. When he saw that neither of his two grandchildren had returned, the old chairman flew into a rage. He immediately scolded his son and daughter-in-law. Fortunately, it was the grandmother who took responsibility again, so the father-in-law didn't dare to lash out anymore. He called his daughter-in-law into his study alone. He demanded to know when the custody of Jack would be returned. Of course, the father-in-law knew that Suun didn't want to do this. He said that she was too narrow-minded and only knew to look at the present. Then he told her to prepare a property as compensation for Ji-young and her husband over the years. Back upstairs, Suun lay in Tom's cot and cried silently. Meanwhile, Minho took Tom and carried him to Ji-young's bed while he was asleep. Ji-young lay next to her, yearned for Sun. 10 years of grievances and longing were instantly released, and the sleeping Tom also called out mommy in his dream, and naturally nestled into Ji-young's arms. The sudden happiness made Ji-young tearful. The next day, the family went to the ski resort to enjoy the happy time together. Ji-young even carried Tom on her back as if she wanted to make up for the lost 10 years. Jack saw his happy mother and knew that the adventure was worthwhile. Miho then realized that Jack had long known the secret from that day, although he didn't understand why the adults did it. The goal was to save him. The father and son embraced each other in tears. The next day, Suun found Ji-young again and begged her to give him Tom back as soon as possible. Ji-young explained that she would return Tom the next day, and thanked Suun for raising Tom to be a happy and healthy child. Suun never expected Ji-young to say thank you. In the past, she was most afraid that Ji-young would take Tom away from her. But now, the one who understands her the most is Ji-young, who she has always regarded as her enemy. Ji-young only hopes that Tom can be happy, and that was the end of her bond with her youngest son. Suun was very moved after hearing this. At that moment, the hearts of the two mothers connected. Before Jack died, his greatest wish was to help his mother find another son. He went to the Chabel's house to apologize for taking Tom without permission. The loving grandmother did not blame him. She hoped that he would move back to live. But Jack had one condition. He wanted to give Tom back to his mother. He hoped that his grandmother would understand how much his mother had missed her youngest son over the past 10 years. I will move in when you have made a decision. After saying this, Jack got up and prepared to leave. Grandma hurriedly chased after him, but she didn't know that the conversation between the two had been heard clearly by her aunt upstairs. She then realized that Tom was not Suun's biological son. She felt a little happy and a little scared. On the other side, In-woo drove Jack home. Up until now, Jack had only called him uncle. When they reached the village entrance, Jack asked In-woo to wait a moment while he went to bring Tom out. In-woo stopped him and said that he had done something in the past that he was sorry for, so he had never dared to come and see him. In-woo knew that Jack had always had a knot in his heart. That is, the guilt of his younger brother. Jack gently wiped away the tears from the corner of his eyes, thanked In-woo for his care these past few days, and turned to walk back home. Looking at his son's thin and weak back, In-woo's heart felt like it had been cut by a knife. And Miho also learned the news, so he came to find In-woo alone first. He felt that there were some things that needed to be clarified in advance. He hoped that before Jack reached adulthood, your family would not use the custody lawsuit to stimulate Ji-young's fragile nerves. As for Jack's surname after he turned 20, he would decide for himself. In-woo said that he could go back and convince his father. The time of parting finally came. Ji-young slowly crouched down and tightly embraced her young son, who was about to leave. As she watched Tom walk away while looking back, Ji-young's heart felt as if it had been emptied. This parting was unknown as to when and where they would meet again. As she watched the car gradually recede into the distance, Ji-young felt her soul being pulled away with it. She fell to her knees in agony, hugging her mother and unable to stop sobbing. In-woo returned home hoping that his father would give up his claim to custody of Jack and not separate Ji-young from him again. But his father, citing the future of the company, said that In-woo was good for nothing and would only dally with women. In-woo had no choice but to threaten his father that if he continued, he would move out. His father was so angry that he wanted to hit him. In-woo said that he would raise the child properly and turned around and walked out of the study. When he went upstairs, he saw Suun asleep with Tom in her arms. After so many days of worry and anxiety, he finally let go. Meanwhile, Ji-young had been running a high fever since she sent Tom away. Fortunately, after testing, there was nothing serious. Mom could tell at a glance that her daughter was suffering from a broken heart. This kind of pain, which is worse than death, can only be felt by a mother. That night, Jack was alone guarding his mother. The high fever had made Ji-young's consciousness fuzzy. She kept calling Tom's name. Jack called In-woo and begged him to bring Tom over. He said he would move in instead of Tom. Please give Tom back to his mother. Ji-young came to her senses after hearing her son's cries. She then realized that Jack had known the truth for a long time. Jack cried and said he would go and exchange his brother back. Ji-young told him to give up this idea, saying that she could not live without him. The mother and son embraced in tears, while In-woo on the other end of the phone kept apologizing. That day, Inwa's sister thought she had helped the company clinch a big deal and was in a complacent mood when Suun handed her a stack of photos that turned out to be intimate photos of her dating her boyfriend while on a business trip, and the boyfriend was the husband of the president of the contracting party. Suun had been conducting background checks on Lena in her capacity as the company's legal director. Now that she has such a big bargaining chip in her hands, she immediately blackmails Lena into quitting the company. Lena's son, Tae-hun, hurried over as soon as he heard the news and volunteered to withdraw from the Smart City project. Suun smiled with satisfaction. In fact, this was her real goal. Back then, it was with Sun's help that the old chairman was able to seize the land from Lena's father-in-law's house. It also indirectly led to the death of Tae-hun's father. Therefore, Lena and her son believe that the humiliation and burden of returning is to regain this land. And according to the old chairman's character, once he finds out that his daughter is scheming under his nose, the only thing that will happen is that he will be kicked out of the house. Seeing that the plan was about to fail, Tae-hun had to kneel down and beg Suun to let them live. Until that day, Lena actually learned from her mother's conversation with Jack that Tom is Ji-young's child. The situation immediately turned around. Although Suun was a little panicked, she still pretended to be calm and denied it. Lena said, "Let's do a paternity test then." After saying this, she turned around and headed for her father's villa. Suun hurriedly chased after her. After entering the house, she hugged Tom. Tom asked his mother why she kept shaking. This made Lena even more pleased. She wasn't in a hurry to tell her father the secret. She wanted to enjoy the feeling of the cat playing with the mouse for a while longer. Suun naturally understood this. She kept hinting that there was no need for Lena to die together with her. During the conversation, she walked up to her and pulled her out the door, leaving the wealthy couple looking confused. Not knowing what the two were up to, Suun told Lena that she would take the person behind her back down with her. Lena laughed dismissively. In fact, Suun had collected all the scandals involving the mother and son abroad over the years. If Lena insisted on disclosing Tom's secret, then they would both go down together. Now both women had their own trump cards. When it came to interests, enemies could instantly switch roles. Lena made a condition that Tae-hun's Smart City project could not be touched, and Suun also wanted to know who had leaked the secret. Lena naturally would not say that she had overheard it from her mother. The more mysterious it remained, the more Suun would be afraid. This trump card naturally had to be kept well. This made Suun furious. However, she would not sit back and do nothing. She used every means to help her father-in-law solve the problem of the stubborn householder. Her father-in-law was indeed overjoyed. Lena had to pretend to congratulate him, and he said he would grant Suun a wish. Suun said that in the future, "If I do something wrong, I hope to be forgiven." Lena knew what she was up to as soon as she heard this. The father-in-law was so happy that he didn't know what to say and agreed. Afterwards, Lena said that Suun was really naive. Suun pretended to be confused and asked why. It turned out that Lena knew her father too well. If you make a mistake, you can still be forgiven by your father. This was originally just a joke. Suun was completely thrown into a panic. That day, her father-in-law called Suun into his study and wrote 3 characters for her to give to Jack as a gift. The lawsuit over custody had made her hurry. Suun then arranged to meet Jack's stepfather and gave him a document. She said it was compensation for him to give up custody of Jack. She told him that Jack would grow up sooner or later. At that time, he knew that if he took the surname, you would not get any compensation. Suun asked him not to reject it hastily, and to give her an answer after careful consideration. Miho returned home and opened the file. Inside, in addition to the land deeds for 3 plots of land, there was also a piece of rice paper with a name written on it. Furious, Miho called Suun to ask what it meant. Suun confessed that it was the instructions of the Chaebol patriarch. The old chairman is convinced that you can't beat him. At this time, Ji-young happened to walk in. Miho quickly put away the file and said he had to go out to take care of something. Ji-young saw the paper left on the table and opened it. An ominous feeling welled up in her. Miho went to the company and found the old chairman to return the file to him. The old chairman still thought he was compensating too little, but Miho said he was doing it for Jack and Tom, so he didn't want to break the face. The old chairman was very surprised why he had to mention his grandchildren. Miho accused him of taking Tom away that year, and now he wants to take Jack away. Does he have a conscience or not? The old chairman then realized that Tom's mother was also Ji-young. Miho realized that the old chairman had no knowledge of this matter. The old chairman, who had always been strong, was completely manipulated by his daughter-in-law this time. He was so angry that he almost fainted. Miho happened to meet Inwa when he came out, and learned that his father already knew about Tom. His worst fear had come true. Miho couldn't understand how this family was cheating on each other. They even hid who the children were born to. Now they were even trading land for Jack. Miho warned Inwa that if they continued to do this, he would reveal everything. Inwoo goes to his father's office, hoping that he will stop meddling in Jack's affairs. But the angry father is not listening to anything anymore. When he hears Inwo say that he should pretend not to know about Tom, he explodes. Inwo says that he just wants to protect his family. Ji-young, on the other hand, has been restless ever since she saw the note. When Miho arrives home, He does not hide the fact that he has gone to see the chairman. Ji-young then realizes that all the secrets are no longer secrets. She went to the chairman and returned the note, saying that she would not let Jack inherit the family business. She also revealed the resentment she had hidden for many years. When Ji-young and In-woo first got married, her father-in-law told her to wait for him in the cold wind. He also said that he would rather sever the father-son relationship than accept Ji-young as a daughter-in-law. Even if she gave birth to a child, she would not be a part of the family. In fact, Ji-young was already pregnant with Jack at that time. Now Ji-young hopes that her father-in-law will keep his promise and not let Jack inherit the family business and not disturb my family. The stubborn old chairman, who had been stubborn all his life, finally bowed his head and admitted his mistake. That day, Jack anonymously went online and chatted with his secret crush, Suun. Suun asked what his wish really was. "You didn't tell me during that previous chat." Jack hesitated and said that he had already fulfilled his wish and found his younger brother. When they were young, he had a serious illness and his brother saved him, but they have been separated for 10 years since then. Suun is very happy for him, but Jack's next words make her nervous. He said he might have relapsed. Suun anxiously asked him to receive treatment as soon as possible, but Jack asked her to forget what she had just said, and then logged off and closed the laptop. Suun felt that this unknown friend of Wang's tone revealed an inexplicable sense of familiarity. That day, Ji-young returned home. Her mother was a little panicked and grabbed her, and took out a bloody tissue from the garbage bag, saying that she found it in Jack's trash can. Ji-young was a little panicked for a moment. Her mother nervously asked, "Could it be a relapse?" Ji-young pretended to be calm and comforted her mother, saying, "Jack has been doing regular checkups, so it shouldn't be." While the two were talking, Jack returned. The conversation between the mother and daughter had to be temporarily interrupted. Ji-young went upstairs and asked Jack if he had a nosebleed. She said that her grandmother had seen a bloody tissue. Jack pretended that it was from accidentally picking his nose. Ji-young suggested that he go for another health check. Jack was obviously a little reluctant. He felt that waiting for the results of each test was a torment, but under his mother's insistence, he reluctantly agreed. And over here, Suun was still worried about the anonymous netizen. It always felt like deja vu. She associated it with the panic she felt that night during their chat. That night, Ji-young received a call from her agent who needed to confirm an email, so she opened her son's computer and accidentally saw the chat history between him and Suun. Ji-young couldn't help smiling when she saw their conversation, but the next message directly crushed her. The word relapse, which was so glaring, made her feel like she was in an ice cave. Ji-young stumbled downstairs and suddenly collapsed in the stairwell. In a daze, she suddenly realized something. She ran back to the bedroom and found the information she had collected before. The painful memories of 10 years ago made her head ache, but she was a mother and had to be strong. Ji-young tried to convince herself that medicine was not the same as it was 10 years ago. She and Miho decided to take Jack for a checkup the next day. Meanwhile, Jack, who had returned to the attic, found his mother's phone. He kept thinking about it until he realized that there was an email waiting for a reply at work. Jack suddenly realized something. He opened the computer, and there was a chat box that suddenly stopped with his words, "recurrence." He knew that the secret could no longer be kept. The family sat together at the table with their hearts full of worries. Finally, Miho spoke up and said that they would go for the checkup the next day, but Jack still didn't want to hear the result. Afraid of hearing the exact result, Ji-young anxiously said, "How long are you going to hide it from us?" Jack had no choice but to agree. The next day, the family went to the hospital and underwent a series of tests. Miho asked when he would know the result. The doctor said it would be next week. On the way back, Jack looked preoccupied. Everyone was trying hard to hold back their emotions. Jack got off the bus halfway, excusing himself to meet Suun. Back home, Miho went to the attic to help Jack tidy up his room. Unintentionally, he found the hospital list. The lines of wishes pierced Miho's heart like an awl. He went to see the doctor alone and asked if there was any way to prevent a relapse. From the doctor, Miho learned of a treatment that would once again plunge his family into despair. The father-in-law looked at his daughter-in-law with ill intent, but Suun, on the other side, was unaware and continued to put on the appearance of a good mother to Tom. The father-in-law really couldn't bear to watch anymore. He thought back to how this cunning daughter-in-law had taken the opportunity to set a trap for him and leave herself a way out. In a fit of anger, the father-in-law threw down his chopsticks, stood up and said he wasn't eating. He went back to the study alone to sulk. At that time, Suun came in with tea. She still didn't know that Minho had gone to the father-in-law and told him that she wasn't Tom's biological mother. Suun was still trying her best to take credit for herself, saying that she was close to getting custody of Jack. The father-in-law, who knew everything, said indifferently that from today onwards, this matter need not be mentioned again. In-woo talked to his mother about this and asked her to persuade his father not to pursue the issue of who gave birth to Tom. Lena also went to her mother and said that Jack could not be adopted now, or else he would become Suun's child, and then the company would belong to her in the future. This family is not big, but they have a lot of tricks. It's better to just observe the world of the rich. Everyone in the family knows that Tom was not born by Suun, but Suun herself has not yet realized this, and is still running full speed ahead on the path to her doom. She suggests that her father-in-law replace all the old people in the group and start a generational change at the top. When he hears this, he flies into a rage, thinking that his daughter-in-law is trying to cultivate her own power. He shouts at Suun, "Isn't it enough that you deceived me for 10 years with Tom's affair?" Hearing this, Suun is so scared that her mind goes blank. She rushes into Lena's office like a madwoman and yells at her for breaking her promise, but Lena denies having said anything. Suun wanted to go to her husband for help, but was told that he was out of town on a meeting and would not be back. She was at a loss for what to do. She didn't know how to protect herself. At that moment, her assistant barged in and said that the chairman's office had issued an official document ordering Suun to be suspended and punished. 10 years of hard work had been ruined in an instant. How could Suun be willing to lose everything like this? She went to her father-in-law's office and asked if he was going to kick him out of the company. Her father-in-law calmly said, "You brought this on yourself." Suun had no choice but to bring up her child, saying that she had raised him with all her heart, as if he were her own son. Her father-in-law was even more furious, saying, "If you really love your child, you wouldn't use him as a bargaining chip with me. This is not something a mother would do." Suun was not yet convinced, saying, "You promised me one wish before." Just then, she no longer wanted to deal with her daughter-in-law, saying that she was truly malicious. Seeing that her father-in-law was so resolute, Suun had no choice but to bow her head and admit her fault, hoping to be given another chance. At this time, the father-in-law's heart is like a mirror, and he tells Suun to go home and concentrate on being Tom's mother. Suun goes home, kneels in front of her mother-in-law and begs her to save her, but her mother-in-law says she can't do anything either, and advises her to still listen to her father-in-law. When Inwo learns the news, he returns home and sees his wife looking like death. He says, "Let's move out and move back in when father-in-law calms down." But having endured the humiliation of this family for 16 years, Suun is not willing to just be kicked out. Suun then thought of a brilliant plan, because she saw the bruises on Jack's body and knew that his illness had returned. To verify her thoughts, Suun found a doctor friend who made the program together. The conclusion was even more shocking to her. It was said that a bone marrow transplant from a younger brother could be used for treatment. Suun chose to hide the truth in order to protect her adopted son, who she treated as her own, and now that she thought of it, it was like grasping a lifesaver. After hearing this, Inwo couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. Suun, on the other hand, was acting as if nothing had happened and eating with her family as usual. She even said that she would let Tom go over to Jack's house to play in a few days. This unusual behavior confused everyone. Her father-in-law thought that she was being defiant. Suun explained that she would never dare to think such a thing. Everything had been handled according to her father-in-law's wishes. Her father-in-law and mother-in-law were at a loss for Suun's behavior. Her father-in-law knew that she had ambitions in the company, but what they didn't expect was that Suun's trump card was actually their eldest grandson Jack's illness. Inwo was also very puzzled by Suun's sudden change in attitude. What solution had he found? Was it related to Jack? Naturally, Suun refused to tell the truth now. Inwo once again warned her not to use the children, but at this point, Suun had already gone mad. As long as it helped her, she would do whatever she could. Inwo implored his father to let Suun go. His father flew into a rage, saying that he was being too soft and that he would never be able to inherit the company. Inwo said that you have always stood by her side, allowing her to remain in a high position. Now you want her to go home and raise a family. Isn't that too cruel? But his father was determined. He knew that his son was indecisive, so he decided to do the evil himself and eliminate the problem for his grandson, who will take over the company in the future. It seems that Inwo can't be nice to both sides. That day, Suun was at a meeting with the production team. The doctor she consulted with last time was also there. The doctor kindly asked her how the child with leukemia was doing. Has the relapse been confirmed? Ji-young's manager was very puzzled when he heard this and asked which friend's child it was. Suun stammered and changed the subject. Jack, who was waiting for the test results, was actually mentally prepared for his relapse. He asked Inwo out and solemnly asked him to do something for him. If my condition relapses today, please don't let my brother come to save me. Inwo didn't know how to answer for a while. Jack said that because of his younger brother, he had lived 10 more years. He didn't want to see him suffer anymore. Inwo was deeply moved by Jack's words. He firmly grasped Jack's hand and asked what had happened. But the sensible Jack didn't want to tell him the truth. He pulled his hand away, stood up, and walked out of the dessert shop alone. Inwo hurriedly chased after him and grabbed his hand. Jack said, "In the future, let my mom occasionally take care of Tom. That's all I ask." After he finished speaking, He suddenly felt dizzy and fainted in Inwoo's arms. Ji-young touched her son's pale face and couldn't help but shed tears. She went outside the ward and told Inwoo that she had taken Jack for a checkup a few days ago, but the results would not be available until the following week. She also said that Jack had long known that there was something wrong with his body, but he had hidden it from everyone. Ji-young asked Inwoo if they had noticed anything unusual when they lived in the villa at that time. Inwoo said that they had not noticed anything unusual. Ji-young is very surprised that Suun knew about it and asked the doctor about the symptoms of a relapse. Inwoo suddenly remembers that yesterday, when Suun was already at the end of her rope, she suddenly came up with a brilliant idea. He then understands that Jack's illness is Suun's lifeline. Ji-young is still in deep self-blame. Back then, she made a promise with God in order to save Jack's life, but now she has broken her promise. Greed has led to the birth of her youngest son, so now God is punishing me. Inwoo comforts her, telling her not to think too much and that he will definitely save Jack. On the way home, Inwoo remembers asking Suun that day, "Is your solution related to Jack?" He finally understands now. Suun is hoping that Jack's illness will recur. The first thing he does when he gets home is to question Suun about knowing that Jack's illness will recur. Suun naturally denies it. Inwoo has already seen through this sinister woman, and under pressure Sun's psychological defenses have collapsed. She said she was only trying to protect herself and didn't consider what was right or wrong. Inwoo thought of the image of Suun using her child to force her father to apologize and beg for mercy, and said angrily, "I will never forgive you." Suun still tried to play the emotional card to explain. Inwoo said he would definitely regain custody of Tom. Suun was instantly scared pale when she heard this. The sound of the two arguing woke up the child. Inwoo ignored Sun's objections and picked up the child and took him to his parents' bedroom. When Inwoo returned, Suun asked him if he wanted to divorce her. She had done nothing wrong. "You can't take custody of the child," Inwoo said. "Then I'll have you removed from the company and you'll never be a lawyer again." Suun panicked and said that the reason she hid Jack's illness was for Tom's sake. "I don't want him to be used as a tool again." But Inwoo had now seen through her. After learning that Jack had relapsed, she actively pressured Miho to give up custody. The only reason is that if Jack becomes her child, she can legally take everything from Jack if something happens to him. Jack slowly woke up in the hospital room. Looking at the infusion bag, he knew that the nightmare from 10 years ago was about to repeat itself. At the same time, Ji-young also learned from the doctor that Jack's relapse had been confirmed. The doctor said that a matching donor needed to be found as soon as possible. Ji-young cried and begged the doctor to save her son. When she came out, she met Inwoo and told him that Jack's diagnosis was a relapse, and that what she had worried about for 10 years had finally happened. Inwoo comforted her, saying that medicine was not what it was 10 years ago and that there would definitely be a way. Ji-young dried her tears, put on a smile and walked into the ward to tell Jack that he had to undergo treatment and that the hospital was actively looking for a donor. But Jack didn't want to stay in the ward waiting for him. He still had a lot of things he wanted to do. Miho endured the pain and said that he understood him. He decided to go and talk to the doctor about being discharged. Jack told his mother that she should never let his younger brother donate, because he didn't want his brother to feel like he was just a tool when he grew up. Ji-young finally understood her son's good intentions in hiding his illness. She could only agree to her son's request with tears in her eyes. After leaving the ward, Ji-young couldn't help but feel heartbreaking pain. She collapsed to the ground and cried uncontrollably. She couldn't just stand by and watch her son die. Ji-young finally called Suun's phone. Suun naturally knew why Ji-young was calling. Pretending to be calm, she agreed to her request. She secretly rejoiced that the opportunity she had been waiting for had finally arrived, but she didn't want to appear too eager. She needed to set a trap for Ji-young to jump into. Suun deliberately stood on the moral high ground and accused Ji-young of using Tom as a tool. Facing Ji-young's desperate pleas, Suun said, "You're just Jack's mother, not Tom's." After saying this, she got up and walked out of the cafe. Ji-young hurriedly chased after her and grabbed Suun, and said that she would give up as long as she could save Jack. She was willing to give up custody of Jack, and would never appear in front of her two sons again. Seeing that Suun was reluctant to agree, Ji-young, with a heavy heart, knelt down in the street for her. Suun pretended to help her up, and then said that she couldn't make the decision and needed to go back and discuss it with her in-laws. With Ji-young's request as backing, Suun returned to the company and found her husband, and demanded that he negotiate with her father-in-law about the status of the company and her identity as Tom's mother. She would not give up either of these things. Inwoo asked her where she got the nerve to negotiate. Suun said that time was on her side and that she had raised Tom single-handedly. If she wanted to save Jack, she would have to go through her. Suun returned home and told her mother-in-law that she was taking Tom on a trip for a few days. Her mother-in-law did not notice anything unusual about her and agreed. When Inwoo returned home and learned that his wife had taken the child on a trip, an ominous feeling welled up in him. He called Suun, but there was no answer. So he angrily threw the phone onto the sofa. He knew very well that this was Sun's warning to him. The cunning Suun naturally would not reveal her whereabouts. She did not take the child to a ski resort, but instead went to the beach. Finally, Inwoo managed to get through to her. Suun told him to meet her at the place where she had saved him. Inwoo was confused. Suun told him to think back and then hung up. She picked up Tom and went to the lighthouse. saying that this was where her mother and father first met. At that time, Suun was often scolded by her mother. In a fit of anger, she went to the beach and tried to commit suicide, but was saved by a handsome boy. That boy was Inwoo. Since then, Suun has worked hard to improve herself, hoping to one day enter Inwoo's world. Jack, on the other hand, has finished his treatment and returned home to wait for a donor. He suggests that the family go on holiday to the beach. While they are walking on the beach, they suddenly discover that Tom is also there. The two brothers excitedly run towards each other and embrace. Inwoo also remembers the past and hurriedly comes to the beach. The 6 members of the two families finally come together. At this time, Suun suggests going out for dinner together. Tom asks if he can go to his brother's house to play. Miho agrees without hesitation, but Suun strongly objects. Inwoo apologizes to Miho for his wife's rudeness. Jack also quickly helps his brother to take his favorite dish, which finally eases the awkwardness. After dinner, Ji-young finds Suun alone and asks her how her discussion with her in-laws went. Suun knows that Ji-young has fallen into the trap. She deliberately says that her father-in-law attaches great importance to legal procedures and is not interested in empty promises, and hoped Ji-young would sign a waiver of custody. Ji-young had no choice but to promise to prepare the required documents. Suun returned home and assured her father-in-law that she would take good care of Tom. However, her father-in-law had long since seen through her ambition. She would never stay at home as a full-time mother. Inwoo also warns her that if she disappears with the child again, she will never see the child again. Suun says that she has already promised Ji-young to let Tom donate bone marrow for Jack's transplant. Inwoo knows his wife too well and asks what kind of conditions she has offered Ji-young, but Suun refuses to talk about it, saying that she wants to save the child first and talk about other things later. Ji-young on the other side did not hide it and told her husband Miho that she had begged Suun herself, but the old chairman took advantage of the situation and insisted on custody of Jack. Miho was reluctant but said he would give up anything to save Jack. Ji-young kept crying and saying sorry. She knew she owed this man in front of her too much. The next day, Miho went to the Civil Affairs Bureau and with great difficulty completed the procedures to terminate the adoption. He then gave the documents to Ji-young to pass on to Suun. Ji-young threw herself into his arms and cried. Suun held back her joy when she received the documents. She knew that there was one more thing she needed to do to be sure, so she handed Ji-young a document. It was an affidavit that she would never see her 2 sons again. Suun said that she would raise the boys well. Ji-young innocently says thank you to Suun. At this moment, the agent happens to walk in and interrupt the conversation. Suun goes home and gives the documents to her father-in-law. Her father-in-law is very surprised. He had previously asked her to terminate the custody lawsuit. Now why does she suddenly have the adoption termination procedures? Suun says it was Ji-young and her husband's own decision. They want to give Jack a better future. Although her father-in-law is very puzzled, he can't help but be charmed by Sun's sweet talk, so he doesn't pursue it further. Suun couldn't help but smile with satisfaction as she walked out the door. The next day, the father-in-law took the documents to Inwoo and said that he had not mentioned Jack since he learned that Tom was also Ji-young's child. Now that Suun said that Ji-young voluntarily gave up the baby, something must have happened in between. As soon as Inwoo heard this, he knew that Suun must have blackmailed Ji-young with the bone marrow donation. However, he did not say this explicitly, but he could not help but keep asking his father. After the old chairman learned the truth, he could not help but burst into tears. He never expected this vicious woman to bargain with the life of his grandson. His father told Inwoo to kick this poisonous woman out of the house immediately. At this time, Suun smugly asked her father-in-law to reinstate her in the company, not knowing that her plot had been revealed. Inwoo asked Ji-young out and returned the adoption termination agreement to her. However, Ji-young was very emotional and begged him not to provoke Suun anymore. The most important thing now was to save Jack's life. Inwoo was so angry that he wanted to tear up the agreement. Ji-young said that your so-called sense of guilt is not helping Jack at all. If you don't agree, I'll treat you as a stumbling block. Ji-young said that she would do anything for the sake of her child. After saying that, she threw the agreement at Inwoo and got up to leave. Inwoo hurriedly chased after her and said that he would return both children to her together. Ji-young told him to take the materials back. That was something that Miho had decided at the risk of his life. He must not let him down. The old chairman returned home and locked himself in the study. He thought about the first time he met Jack and knew that his illness was already planning for the future of his parents. Just thinking about this, the old chairman felt heartbroken. Inwoo came back and handed him the materials. He said that Suun forced Ji-young and his wife to give up custody in your name. The old chairman instructed Inwoo to immediately bring Tom back, but Inwoo said that a divorce lawsuit would take a long time. Suun is a lawyer, and it is this that he dares to do. The old chairman jumped up in anger and scolded him. He is just too soft-hearted, which is why he is controlled by Suun. Inwoo goes to Tom's room and sees him on a video call with his brother. Tom asks if he can go to his brother's house to play. Inwoo feels that it is necessary to tell him the truth, so he says, Jack is your real brother. Now he is sick and needs your help. Tom is scared when he hears that he has to go to the hospital, but he also feels that Jack is his real brother. so he is very conflicted. He gets under the covers and cries. When Suun returns, Tom immediately hugs his mother. He asks if what his father said is true, that he is scared of going to the hospital. Suun comforts him, saying, "Mom will protect you. You're not going to the hospital." Suun then angrily finds In-woo and scolds him for not consulting with her before talking to the children. If you use Tom as a tool to cure your illness, you have no right to be a father. In-woo is now extremely annoyed with her. He says, "You're using Ji-young's father's name to pressure her. I won't tolerate your behavior anymore." Suun asks, "Are you going to divorce me?" But In-woo knows that Suun, as a lawyer, must have calculated the custody rights and alimony. He now hates Suun and doesn't want to give her anything. In-woo says he won't divorce her, but will take away all her rights at the company. Suun can't believe that her husband has suddenly become so ruthless. At this time, Jack's hospitalization time is up again. He wants to go to the hospital in his school uniform. The family tries to hold back their grief and pretend that everything is fine on the surface. At this time, Ji-young receives a call from Suun. She and Tom had already arrived at the hospital to have blood drawn to see if the results matched, but she had a sinister thought in her heart. Ji-young thought Suun was keeping her promise, but she didn't know that Suun was setting another trap. After returning home, In-woo thought that Suun had been restrained by yesterday's warning, but he underestimated his wife's desire for revenge. In-woo looked incredulous. Suun said, "You forced me to do this. Since you are so unkind, don't blame me for being rude. If you won't let me be Tom's mother, then I will make you both pay." Suun finished speaking and left In-woo alone in the bedroom. The grandfather of this billionaire chaebol came to the hospital. Facing the illness in his grandson, there was nothing he could do. At this time, he realized that even money can't solve everything. Jack cried and told him that he also wanted to live. The grandfather of the chaebol was moved to tears by his words. The grandfather told Jack to be strong. He would definitely find a way. On the way back, the chairman could not hold back his tears when he thought of his grandson's longing eyes. Father came to In-woo's house to talk to Suun alone. Father-in-law affirmed Suun's hard work and contributions over the years. "But now you are trading my life for my grandson's life. I will never tolerate this." Suun said that she was also gambling with her life. "Now the lives of Jack and I are in your hands." The old chairman, who had never given up in his life, finally bowed to his daughter-in-law for the sake of his grandson. Suun makes a condition: she must be recognized as Tom's mother. The chairman agrees and promises not to mention it again. In addition, Suun wants her position in the company reinstated and a share of the company. Without hesitation, the chairman agrees. However, he also says that there is an additional condition to the agreement. That is for Tom to donate bone marrow to Jack. If for some reason he is unable to do so, the deal is immediately null and void. Suun, who has worked so hard, finally gets what she wants. The chairman returned to his study and instructed In-woo to reinstate Suun and give her the corresponding legal person shares. In-woo couldn't understand why his father had suddenly changed his attitude. His father said that Jack had told him that he wanted to live. It can be seen how hard he is holding on. As soon as In-woo heard this, he couldn't help but shed tears. Fortunately, the chairman was still lucid enough to let In-woo make sure that the agreement stated that if Tom was unable to save Jack's life, Suun would be left with nothing and be forced to leave the family home. In-woo said that he would definitely do as he was told. Finally, his father told him not to let his guard down with Suun. At this time, Suun didn't know whether to be happy or sad, and she sat on the sofa, wiping her tears. In-woo said, "You've already won. Why are you crying?" Suun said, "I did my best for my family, but in the end, I only used Tom to avoid being kicked out of the house." In-woo said, "You're only thinking about your own selfish desires. You're not worthy of being a mother." Suun blamed her whole family for this. Her parents abandoned her at a young age. "If I were a rich girl, would you still bully me like this?" At this point, she didn't need to explain herself any further. Suun told In-woo to carry out the conditions she had set. In-woo also coldly warned her that if she dared to play any tricks on Tom again, she would lose everything. After saying this, he walked out with a disgusted face. The next day, the doctor told Ji-young and her husband that Jack's bone marrow only had a 50% match rate. In order to avoid more serious side effects, they would have to undergo conservative chemotherapy for a period of time. Suun heard the news and went to Ji-young to ask what was going on. When she heard that they were looking for a 100% match and that they didn't need Tom's bone marrow for the time being, Suun panicked. Her father-in-law had made it very clear that she would get nothing if Tom didn't donate his bone marrow. She scolded Ji-young for teasing her. Ji-young said that she was afraid of breaking her promise, but she didn't know that Suun wasn't worried about whether Jack could be saved. She was just worried that she would be kicked out of the house. Jack vomits uncontrollably whenever he eats due to the irritating effects of the chemotherapy drugs. Ji-young looks at her son, tormented by illness, and strokes his face tenderly, but she accidentally scratches off a handful of hair. Ji-young knows this is a side effect of chemotherapy. Jack's secret crush also comes to the ward to cheer him up. She is like a ray of light in the gloom, entering Jack's sad heart. Fortunately, there is no way the sky will block people's paths. The Bone Marrow Center calls Ji-young's family to tell them some good news. They found a 100% compatible donor. This made the family overjoyed, but Miho was worried that the person might change their mind. The doctor said that the donor was very determined. Normally, they wouldn't change their mind. The three of them signed the agreement and happily walked out of the doctor's office. Mom said that they didn't need Tom to donate bone marrow, so Jack's guardianship wouldn't need to be given up. But these words were overheard by Suun, who was next door. She thought about the additional conditions that her father-in-law had added to the agreement and panicked. Suun went into the doctor's office and asked if they had found a 100% match. The doctor said yes. Now you don't have to worry about Tom's suffering. Suun wanted to ask for the donor's information, but a phone call came for the doctor. She took advantage of the doctor's absence to jot down the donor's information. The doctor answered the phone and didn't think much of it, quickly retrieving the folder. The next day, the doctor came to see Ji-young and her husband again to tell them that the donor had suddenly changed his mind. Ji-young wanted to call the donor herself to beg him, but the doctor said that the hospital had a rule that did not allow the two parties to contact each other privately. Jack's transplant date had already been set, and they could only choose Tom's bone marrow. With no choice, Ji-young and her husband had to accept the reality. Ji-young called Suun and begged her to allow Tom to donate bone marrow. Suun pretended to comfort Ji-young, telling her not to worry and that she would do what she had promised. After hanging up the phone, she finally let out a sigh of relief. Soon, Suun brought Tom to the hospital. Ji-young looks at her young son with mixed feelings. Tom signs the donation agreement and is taken into the operating room by the doctor. The two mothers watch their sensible sons with their own thoughts. Suun gets the shares from her father-in-law as she wished, but her father-in-law tells her that Jack's affairs are to be handled by Inwoo, so you don't need to get involved. Suun has gained everything but lost the hearts of her family, including her mother-in-law, who has always defended her, is also extremely disappointed in her. Suun had no choice but to go back to her room and hug Tom for comfort. Meanwhile, Jack was lying in the hospital bed, dying. The rejection of the bone marrow transplant had made him feel like he was dying. Ji-young cried out her son's name, begging the heavens to save her poor child. She wanted to rush into the ward, but her husband held her back. At that moment, her ex-husband Inwoo also arrived at the hospital. The doctor said that if the bone marrow was a 100% match, there would not have been such severe side effects. In this situation, they could only leave it to fate. Inwoo asked Miho and found out that there was a 100% match donor who changed his mind at the last minute. Inwoo felt vaguely that something was wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. He returned home with a heavy heart and asked Suun why she didn't tell him about the 100% match donor. Suun gave a vague excuse, saying that the person had changed his mind and that there was no point in telling you. Inwoo didn't pursue the matter. However, Suun was overwhelmed with anxiety. She wanted wealth and status. She never thought about killing Jack. Fortunately, Tom came out at this time and asked his father if his blood was not good enough to help his brother. Suun hugged her son to comfort him. Her brother will definitely get better. Then she took her child to pray for Jack together. Suun came to the company the next day, always distracted. She felt that she should still go to the hospital to find out the truth. It happened that she saw the coordinator of the transplant center talking to Miho. Feeling guilty, she quickly hid in the corner, but was seen by Jack's grandmother, who asked her what she was doing there. Suun had to pretend that she was here to visit Jack. Then she asked indirectly what the transplant coordinator was doing there. Miho said that he was also here to check on Jack's condition. The grandmother was still bothered by why the 100% donor had backed out. Suun pretended to comfort her, saying that even a perfect match had side effects. At this time, Ji-young happened to walk over. Suun pretended to say that she wanted to accompany her to dinner, although Ji-young was reluctant. Her mother urged her to go out for some fresh air. Ji-young had no choice but to agree to go out for a while. At this time, Jack in the ward woke up from his coma. However, he could not tell who the person in front of him was. After a thorough examination by the doctor, it was determined that it was because Tom's bone marrow was only a half match, that there had been a serious complication that had damaged the optic nerve. It may be a temporary phenomenon that can be slowly recovered. It may also be a permanent injury that causes insomnia. Ji-young's heart ached when she heard this. Inwoo comforted her, saying that the good man will be protected by heaven. Grandma also came to the ward to visit Jack. Jack struggled to beg his grandmother that if he died, his mother would definitely be sad. He asked his mother to let Tom come and see her often. Ji-young really couldn't bear to hear anymore, and told her son to be strong. Miho couldn't help but cry bitterly outside the ward. At this time, Inwoo came to the hospital to pick up his mother. He happened to bump into the coordinator of the transplant center, who said that the 100% compatible donor had called to inquire about Jack's transplant status. Ji-young was very surprised. The coordinator said that the donor might have misunderstood something. He received a call from the recipient's family saying that someone in the family had donated and that his help was no longer needed. This confused Ji-young and Inwoo. They asked each other if they had received such a call, but after much speculation, they still couldn't figure out who would have reason to make such a call. What's more, they didn't even know the donor's information. On the way home, Inwo thought about what Suun had said before and decided to go back to the hospital and ask for more information. He went to the transplant center and found the coordinator, and asked if any of his family members had asked for donor information. The coordinator said that Tom's mother had been here, and was probably a little worried about her son's condition because he was so young. Inwo asked if you had given her the donor's phone number. The coordinator said that there was a rule that the information could not be disclosed, but she recalled that when she was answering the phone that day, Suun kept looking down at the information on the table, but she promptly removed the folder. Inwo instantly understood and stumbled down the stairs. He couldn't understand how his wife, whom he had always defended, could be such a ruthless and vicious woman. He returned home in a daze and questioned Suun as to why she had called the donor. Suun panicked when she saw that her plot had been uncovered. She tried to argue that no matter who donated, there would be some side effects. Inwo said that Jack is now blind. Is this what you call a side effect? Suun was so scared that she covered her mouth. Inwo said that he can't live with her anymore and told Suun to get out of the house immediately. Tom, who had been awakened by the noise, came out and cried, asking his father not to treat his mother like this. Inwo said that she is not your mother. Suun quickly picked up the child and walked into the room, locking the door behind her. No matter how Inwo pounded on the door outside, she was unable to help. Suun covers Tom's ears and comforts him endlessly. Inwo goes to the hospital and stands outside the ward, quietly watching Jack and his son, thinking that his wife has caused his eldest son to go blind. He can't help but cover his face and cry. Minho asks him to go in and talk to Jack, but Inwoo feels that he can no longer face them. He stays alone in the office and doesn't want to go home. Early in the morning, Suun comes to the door and begs for his forgiveness. Inwoo says, I can tolerate you for other things, but you risked Jack's life. That's crossing the line. Suun said, then I'll move out with Tom, or we can just get a divorce. Inwoo told her to stop dreaming. I told you I'd take everything from you. Suun didn't expect her husband to be so resolute this time. She walked out of the office in a daze. But Lena saw everything. Lena walked into the office and asked Inwoo what had happened. Suun looked like she was about to die. Inwoo didn't hide anything and told Lena what Suun had done. Lena couldn't sit still anymore. She went to the hospital to find Ji-young and told her what Suun had done. Ji-young couldn't understand why Suun had done that. Lena said it was because Suun had signed an agreement with her father. Suun could only get everything she wanted if Tom donated the bone marrow. Ji-young couldn't imagine that people's hearts could be so treacherous. Thinking about what Suun had said to comfort her before, Ji-young felt it was utterly ironic, and questioned why Suun would want to stop the donor. Suun repeated her old trick of saying that she would be sued for slander. Ji-young looked at this shameless person and said, you have never treated me sincerely. I will not let Tom be raised by a scum like you again. Suun became anxious at these words and hurriedly chased after Ji-young. However, she was unable to stop Ji-young from leaving. The next day, Suun received a summons from the court. Ji-young had formally filed a lawsuit to regain custody of her youngest son. Suun angrily confronted Ji-young and asked if she was determined to do this. Ji-young was determined and would never back down. She warned Suun not to use Tom as a shield. Suun had no choice but to argue forcefully that even if a transplant of a perfectly matched marrow was performed, there was still a chance of failure. Ji-young is fed up with Suun's hypocritical attitude and gets up to leave the cafe. The scene that she has been afraid of for 10 years finally occurs. Suun cannot suppress her fear. Meanwhile, Ji-young's lawyer, who calls In-woo to ask about the situation. In-woo asks him to do his best to help Ji-young mobilize the best team of lawyers to fight the lawsuit. At this time, Suun walks in. Thinking that her husband does not know that Ji-young has sued, she begs him to convince Ji-young to give up. In-woo looked at her coldly and said that you have to pay the price for your mistakes. Suun said, how can you bear to hurt your son? In-woo was furious and told her not to use her child as an excuse anymore. You're so hypocritical. If you really feared hurting your son, you shouldn't have done that in the first place. Suun knew that her escape route was now cut off. She found the show's producer and said, I have a brilliant material that will definitely be a hit. Suun told the story of what happened back then on a live broadcast. There was a woman who, in order to save her son with leukemia, disregarded ethics and morals, and her divorced ex-husband artificially inseminated to give birth to a younger son as a tool to save her older son. The uninformed masses cursed such a thing as a violation of human ethics. Some even led the rhythm in the direction of an affair. Ji-young's manager advised her to ignore public opinion. Ji-young was very calm. From the day she filed the lawsuit, she knew that what was to come would come. Suun thought she had succeeded. As soon as she got home, she was scolded by Lena. Naturally, she refused to back down and said that if she didn't do this, there was no way she could survive in this family. Lena, who still didn't know how to repent, warned Suun not to use this incident to provoke her parents. Suun went into the children's room and stroked the sleeping face of her son. She was now deserted by everyone, and she could only hold on to her child as a lifeline. Lawyer who came to see Ji-young and said that public opinion was now against you. Suun's side has proposed a settlement, but Ji-young has already made up her mind to persevere. Lawyer who could only call In-woo and tell him the stakes. In-woo also expressed his support for Ji-young to continue with the lawsuit. In court, Suun still clung to ethics and morality. and accused Ji-young of using her youngest son as a tool and abandoning him afterwards. Ji-young defended to the judge that she had no choice but to agree to Suun's conditions at that time due to the circumstances. At this time, Suun submitted written evidence to the court, a written waiver of custody that Ji-young wrote to Suun in order to get Tom to donate bone marrow, to prove that Ji-young had simply used Tom as a tool. But this gave lawyer Who a reason to say that this precisely proved how Suun had used Ji-young's motherly love to force her to agree to such a cruel condition. This was the same trick used 10 years ago to force Ji-young to give up her child. The judge is puzzled, since she had already agreed to donate and signed the consent form. Why is she suing? Lawyer Who says it's because a perfect match donor has appeared. Suun was afraid of not getting the company's shares, so she secretly stopped the donor, causing Jack to go blind after the transplant. Suun is furious and says this is slander. Lawyer Who says he will now summon witnesses to testify. What no one expected was that the witness who came was Suun's husband. In-woo had previously considered the bonds of marriage and had found his wife to tell her, while it is still not too late to give Tom back to Ji-young and you will be forgiven. But at this time Suun had gone mad. She accused her husband of only having eyes for his ex-wife, saying that her husband and ex-wife had been having a mental affair, and tried to push her son into the dock. This is something a mother can do. In-woo had already seen through Suun's intentions. Give up Tom now and I will admit that you are thinking of your son. Suun knew she had no one to turn to, but she never expected her husband to appear as a witness for Ji-young. In-woo admitted that their youngest son was conceived through artificial insemination by himself and his ex-wife. In order to get the approval of his current wife, he had to give up the child and let her raise him. Lawyer Who asked why. In-woo said it was because his wife's ovaries had prematurely aged and she was unable to bear children. In order to get his father-in-law's approval and inherit the property, he pretended that he had given birth to the child. Suun couldn't sit still any longer and questioned In-woo as to why he had done this to himself. At this point, In-woo had already put aside the feelings of husband and wife, and told the judge the truth about how Suun had blocked the donation in order to obtain the company's shares, causing her eldest son to go blind. In view of the complexity of the case, the judge decided to postpone the retrial. Ji-young and her husband, who had just walked out of the courtroom, expressed their gratitude to In-woo for his righteousness and betrayal of his own family. When he noticed that Suun was taking her time coming out, In-woo returned to the courtroom. In-woo saw Suun sitting blankly in the lawyer's seat and persuaded her to let go, or else she would lose her lawyer's position. Suun angrily jumped up and said that she now owned shares in the company and no one could touch her. In-woo persuaded her not to fight anymore. Suun, however, said that it was her duty to make a final argument for the sake of her child. However, public opinion on the internet had already changed, accusing her of taking advantage of the situation and using unscrupulous means. The program team also asked her to withdraw from the guest seat in order to recover the ratings. Suun's subordinates were even discussing her angrily, expressing their disapproval of her actions of snatching her best friend's husband. Her most trusted assistant also tendered her resignation in order to save herself. Suun was really deserted by everyone. Lawyer Who found Ji-young and told her that things were going very well. As long as Tom appeared in court once, the case could be closed. Ji-young hesitated at the mere thought of her youngest son meeting the judge. She didn't want to hurt her youngest son, but Lawyer Who said that Suun had already agreed. If we objected, it would be very disadvantageous. Meanwhile, Grandma came to visit Tom. Tom cried and threw himself into Grandma's arms. He said that he had heard strange things from the other children, saying that he wasn't his mother's biological son. Grandma comforted him, saying, "Your brother overcame his illness when he was 6 years old. Grandma believes that you can overcome it too." Tom seemed to understand, and he hugged Grandma and cried. He ran outside alone and called his father on the phone, crying and asking if his mother was his real mother. In-woo became anxious upon hearing this and told him not to move from where he was and that he would be there soon. Upon learning that Tom had gone missing, Suun went crazy and accused Ji-young of illegally abducting Tom. Ji-young said that she had never seen her young son. This made Suun even more panicked. She ran all over the places Tom used to go to, but she found nothing, until she met Ji-young, who had come looking. On the street, Suun grabbed Ji-young by the collar and warned her, "If anything happens to the baby, you're in trouble." Ji-young told her to think about where Tom might have gone. Just then, In-woo called to say that he had found Tom. His birth mother Ji-young and adoptive mother Suun hurried over. Tom ran over, crying, "Mommy," and threw his arms around Suun, crying bitterly. Ji-young, who was standing nearby, was stunned. Ji-young felt a mixture of emotions as she looked at the mother and son in front of her, hugging each other and crying. No matter how cunning and deceitful Suun had been in the past, at least her love for Tom was sincere. She walked out of the police station alone, feeling lonely. In-woo sensed Ji-young's sadness and despair and chased after her, wanting to comfort her, but Ji-young told him to go back and spend some time with Tom. Miho called to say that his eldest son Jack's eyes had improved. Ji-young couldn't believe it. Jack read the newspaper to her on the spot. Grandma was so happy that she almost jumped up. There was finally a glimmer of light in the difficult life. Ji-young cried and said she would be home soon. Before long, the day of the final trial arrived. Suun asked Ji-young if she regretted having come this far. Ji-young asked her in return, "Don't you regret having come this far?" Suun told her not to avoid her questions. Ji-young said the reason she started the lawsuit was because she wanted you to be punished. But I never expected that the child would be hurt because of it. Suun's decade-long kindness in raising her youngest son. Ji-young deeply regrets that she has never sincerely felt grateful and has come to court today. Suun cannot help but shed tears. Lawyer who is afraid that Ji-young will say something unfavorable to the verdict and asks the judge to talk to the client. But Ji-young says she wants to cancel the lawsuit. Upon hearing this, the entire audience is in an uproar. The family expresses support for Ji-young's thoughts. After the trial, Ji-young went to see Suun. Suun said she regretted what she had done. Ji-young told her not to think about it anymore. Suun said, "You withdrew the lawsuit to prove that you are the real mother, right? But I am also a mother, aren't I?" This is Minho saying that Jack's eyesight is slowly improving. In-woo was overjoyed when he heard this. Suun also shed tears of remorse. When the father-in-law learned that it was indeed Suun who had blocked the bone marrow donation, In-woo said that Jack's vision was improving, but his father-in-law absolutely could not tolerate anyone hurting his grandson. His father-in-law stood up and told Suun to leave the house immediately. Suun knew that everything was irreparable, but In-woo began to sanctimoniously say that he had known Suun's love for him all these years and affirmed her love for Tom. The next day, Suun took Tom to take pictures and do crafts together. She wanted to leave her son with a beautiful memory. That night, after her son fell asleep, Suun stroked his face and told him to forget his mother. When In-woo arrived at the hotel, there was only her sleeping son and a divorce agreement. Tom woke up, crying, and asked to go to his mother. In-woo picked him up and walked into the elevator. Suun, hiding in the corner, was heartbroken. Lawyer who told Ji-young that the bar association had revoked Suun's license, and Suun was already fighting a divorce. However, her father-in-law has given her a generous alimony, so she has no financial worries. Suun goes to the beach where she tried to kill herself 20 years ago. I know you all want to push her from behind. Unfortunately, a voice stops her. It turns out to be her mother, who abandoned her years ago. After a long talk, the mother and daughter reconcile. What's more, they even open a cafe by the beach. Although Jack has not moved into the luxury mansion, he still visits his grandparents often. In-woo also regularly brings his young son to visit Ji-young and her husband, so that they can enjoy the happiness of being a family. Maybe that's just how life is. There are just too many imperfect things. I know everyone is upset that the bad guys are still at large, but in real life, things like this happen all the time. Okay, that's the end of today's story. Thank you for your support and company. See you next time.